Los Angeles is known as the place of opportunity. It is a place where people come to make their dreams come true. And I just happen to be one of them. For the first 15 years of my life, I called Landenberg home, a little township in rural Pennsylvania. I lived my life as a good pastor's daughter in a strict evangelical church. My parents were raised in the same church, got married, and had their first kid at 18. My mom was a housewife, and my dad was a pastor. This was the traditional lifestyle that I was expected to fit in. I am 18 now, and if I had not left, I would most likely be married with a kid on the way. Being born in Los Angeles gives you an advantage, but moving here has given me a perspective. Like some of you, I was frightened by the recent election results of the presidential elections of 2024. If nothing else, it has made me really thankful for my move to Los Angeles, being in such an accepting city. Growing up as a pastor's daughter in a strict evangelical church in rural Appalachia, I was shielded so much from the secular world. I wasn't fully aware of the choices that I had made and the choices that I had in my own identity. If you have ever felt stuck in any given situation, this speech will encourage you to not be afraid to uproot your material life to live authentically and to invite change into your life. When I was around 14, my family decided to leave the church. My sister had come out as a lesbian, and shortly after, I came out as bisexual. And the church wanted my father to publicly denounce homosexuality as a sin, and that was something he was not willing to do. After a long time of soul searching, my father realized he had been taught lies created in hate and fear. Evangelicals preaching so-called love and acceptance will only love you if you fit their mold, and will quickly send you to hell if it seemed otherwise. My family had woken up. We realized we had a choice on how we wanted to live our own lives. Knowing that the church no longer served us, our rural community was no longer safe, and more opportunities began to present themselves in Los Angeles. It was a no-brainer. We moved quickly. First, I'd like to provide some background into my life at the church. We were taught through fear. If you truly believed that you'd burn in hell, would you leave? We were taught to fear the people outside of God's love. That way we will never know how much we are missing, as we have never been immersed in the power of personal choice. You don't know what you're missing if you haven't experienced it. I didn't know what being gay was until I was around 10 years old when I first went to public school. I only knew that it was bad and that I shouldn't say it. These weren't things that were put on me by my parents, but my church and my community. My entire family was raised in this, including my parents. I can recall one Sunday in Bible school as a young child, everyone in the class was going through what God had told them this week, and I said, when it came to my turn, I don't hear God, and I don't think any of you do either. Naturally, this caused a huge scandal. Many years later, my father came to me at night and mentioned what I had said that day, way back when, and proceeded to say, do you ever think the Bible is just a bunch of stories from 1,000 years ago that should be taken figuratively, not literally? That night, I realized that we were in all the same boat of ignorance, my family and I. None of us knew our truths, and we had only known what we had been told our truths should be. Now, I think it's worth mentioning that everyone in my family is still religious in some aspect. This speech, in no shape, way, or form, is an atheist view mocking Christianity. However, religion is often used as a tool by those who are power-hungry to control the weak, and this is just an example of that. Everyone is entitled to live freely, to believe their own truths. The only problem religions run into is when they think their own truth is superior to others, and that other beliefs are sinful. Christianity is a religion of unconditional love. However, it is sadly rarely practiced this way. Love is not unconditional if there are conditions in the agreement of how you are loved. In the word of James Baldwin, we can disagree and still love each other unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and denial of humanity and right to exist. Powerful words. Not only was our church not safe, our community wasn't either. My middle school history teacher once told me his two favorite presidents were Andrew Jackson and Trump. To put that in perspective, those are arguably the two most racist presidents in our country's entire history. This offers more perspective on the views the majority of the town held. Anyone who is not hateful of minorities was the minority in this town. I have 3 older siblings. In a short span of 3 years, all of us came out with different queer identities. This town began to feel like a dead end, that everything it had once offered was gone, as we no longer fit the groups that these resources were accessible to. My dad stepped down as a pastor. He was not only leaving his community and everything that he had once known, but he was now out of a job. He had no job. There was nothing here for us anymore. We looked to the west for opportunity. Our lives were played out in Pennsylvania. We had reached the end of our story here. Everything that we had once imagined our lives to be were taken away in an instant. The lives we could have lived were stolen from us, or so I thought. It took me a while to realize that these lives were not stolen, but I had been given the gift of rebirth, a clean slate. I had spent my whole life preparing for what had already been lined up for me. This was the first time in my life I had felt uncertainty, but uncertainty can also be seen as opportunity. I wasn't sure what course of action to take, so I followed my heart. This is what brought me to my true self. I was afraid to move from what I knew. But in a way, I moved from who I was, not just a location. I left the part of me afraid to go after what I truly wanted in Pennsylvania. The part of me who listened to conformity was dead, and my true self was born through this dramatic change. The unknown is not something to fear, but something to explore. You are the main character in all of your own lives. The way you live your life is completely in your own hands, but often it takes great change to realize that is the case. Many of you listening today are extremely fortunate to grow up here in Los Angeles. Growing up and accepting in a diverse community is something that should literally never be taken for granted of. On top of that, Los Angeles is the city of dreams and opportunity. It is the place to come to make change. Here, young minds are taught that they have the power of choice. As they grow up immersed in the diversity that the city has to offer, it allows children to reject conformity. However, you can only reject conformity when you are aware of your own oppression. However, this was my case. It's many cases around the world. Hopefully my story has taught you never to fear accepting change and being proactive in defending and discovering your true self, because you shouldn't just sit with something that you feel uncomfortable with. You should dissect it and see the steps that you can take to be your true self, to be more authentic. Thank you.